we're going to have a wonderful pillar of our inner development program and someone who's been a facilitator for us for the past few years lead a short meditation to kick us off today as we arrive. So Steve, let me pass it over to you to lead us through a quick meditation to start us off.
Okay, great. So I'm hearing a little bit of echo. I just want to make sure I got that off. All right. Hi, Peter. It's good to see you also. And just inviting us all to settle in for a moment. And letting ourselves intentionally pause for these moments. Come into the sensate part of our organism. And for this time, allow ourselves the attitude of nothing to do, nowhere to go. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Allowing yourself some space and time, gathering your awareness, and turn it ever so gently towards the sensation of your sitting. And in this moment, there's no need to change how you're sitting. Simply notice the sensations of how you're sitting right here, right now. I invite your body to find an alive and alert posture. And as you do that, feel the pull of gravity. Gravity is an attractive force, always, moment to moment, letting us know our deep belonging right here, right now. Feeling our belonging. And taking a moment to scan your body and notice if there's anything that would like to let go or relax. I invite you to actually bring your attention to the area around the brow of your eyes and see if there's anything that could soften to the jaw, letting go in the neck and shoulders, softening the belly, letting your arms and legs rest in gravity. Allowing your awareness to settle down into your feet, feeling them touch the ground beneath you. If you're sitting without your feet on the ground, feel your sit bones of your pelvis. Feel the sensation of contact, the feeling of how you're being supported right now, right here, held gently by this attractive force of gravity, letting you know you belong. And taking this awareness and turning our awareness towards our breath, gently and with an open attention, specifically the sensations of breath. This breath, as it is, without needing to change it or alter it. Feeling the sensations of the chest and abdomen as they rise and fall on the in-breath and again on the out-breath. And letting ourselves for a few moments rest in the sensations of breath. Be intimate with the simple sensations of breath. Meeting breath with a full and deepening awareness. If you find your attention has wandered, simply pause and kindly and gently return to the breath. the sensations of breath, right here, right now, inviting a continuum of awareness, moment to moment. And continue tracking your breath with awareness and simply listen to these instructions. In a moment, I'm going to invite us to collectively take 3 breaths together. The breaths I'm asking you to take can fill your lungs fully, and at the turn of the breath, let the exhale be twice as long as the inhale. Adding a gentle sound of air passing, a sigh, a hum. So now, together, we begin with a full inhale, starting from the belly, up through the heart, top of the lungs. Notice the turn of the breath, and let the exhale be long and with a soft sound. Second breath from the belly, up from the belly, up through the lungs, top of the lungs. Lengthening the exhale, letting go, letting go. Final breath from the belly, filling the lungs, turning the extended exhale, offering sound. And now letting your breath return to its natural rhythm. And then with open awareness, notice, what are you experiencing right now? Open attention, big field awareness. What are you experiencing right now? And then at your own pace, gently returning to our Zoom room, perhaps letting your body find some movement and opening the eyes so we can be present and attentive to all that Peter has to offer.
Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you for opening up the session for us. Peter, thank you for joining us today.
So, my thing is trauma. I've been accused of being a trauma monomaniac. It's something that I've studied and worked with for 45 years. And, I was thinking for your needs right now, because obviously we are all aware of the threat from the coronavirus. And so I've been talking a lot to groups of people, therapists and lay people and emergency responders and physicians and nurses that are facing this threat on a daily basis. And our nervous systems and our bodies have evolved in environments which are potentially threatening or even lethal. Now, what we will do is we will notice something in our environment that has a potential of threat. So we identify it, we assess it, and then we respond, usually with fight or flight. I'm sure you've all heard of that. But what happens when we can't localize the threat? When it's all around us and we need somehow to not be complacent, but not be living in fear. And again, because it's something that is an ongoing stressor, and it adds and adds and adds to the load that we carry in our bodies and in our minds. So, and I don't know, I have a vague idea of the kind of work that you all do. It has to do with social action, which is so critically important, as we're seeing every day more and more and more and more. But again, what happens is when we can't identify the source of threat, but we know it's there, it's pervasive. So what we'll do is, instead of activating to flee or to fight, we collapse in overwhelming helplessness. And that's really a lot of what trauma is about. And one of the things that I discovered when I began developing the work in the late 1960s and 70s is that the threat that we experience is something that our bodies do. Our bodies somehow sense fear. And so what we have to do is find new experiences in the body that in a way contradict those of overwhelming helplessness. And I'm going to do a little exercise with you. I welcome you to join in, and we can add this to Stephen's meditation. There's a nerve that goes from the back of the brain, and the nerve goes down through the whole body, below the diaphragm, and into all of our organs, all of our visceral organs. It's called the vagus nerve. It's the largest nerve in the body by far. And vagus is really from the Latin, which is the root of vagabond, of wanderer. And that nerve wanders all around, and it particularly affects our guts and our heart and lungs as well. What happens when we're unable to identify the source of threat and respond actively, this system goes into action. And again, the system has the function of reducing our energy level. That's why when we're exposed to continuing threat, we usually are experiencing something like exhaustion or burnout. So anyhow, let's get back to this wanderer, this nerve that goes to all of our organs. And, excuse me. So when we see something horrible, or whether we're exposed to ongoing threat, ongoing danger, it doesn't have to even be actual. It's something we may just perceive. So this nerve, if you see something terrible, the nerve, sends a message down to our gut to tighten up, and that nerve, that very large nerve, it turns out that, 80%, at least 80%, is information that's coming from the gut, from our viscera, back up into our brains. So when we see something horrible, the nerve goes to our belly, says, ugh. And what happens then is that yuck goes back up the vagus nerve, because again, it's taking information from the guts up to the brain, and it gets amplified there. So we start with ugh, that goes up to the brain, it gets amplified, and then we experience ugh. And after that happens a few times, we don't even really recognize it. We just start to have these kinds of symptoms like exhaustion, burnout, fear, anxiety, depression. And so I'm going to give you a very simple exercise that can help shift us out of the state of chronic stress, chronic fear, chronic shutdown. And the idea is actually quite simple. It's really to make a certain vibration sound, and I'll demonstrate it, as though it's coming from your belly. So remember I said that trauma is about this kind of overwhelming helplessness. So by experiencing new sensations and new feelings, what we're doing is changing that nerve pathway that again goes from our brain down to our guts, then goes back up from our guts to our brain. So we start yuck, yuck, and yeah. So I don't know what you all do in your work, but if you're involved in social change, this is a time where there is not a lot of safety, but there's a lot of threat. So anyhow, let's just do this exercise together. So I'm going to take an easy full breath. I'll demonstrate it first. I'm going to take an easy full breath. And on the exhalation, I'm going to make the sound boo, as though it's coming from my belly. And some of you, I don't know what your native languages are, but this sound might be a little bit difficult, but don't worry about it. So again, the idea is to take an easy full breath, not to force it. And on the exhalation, make this sound. And feel the vibration. I'm feeling the vibration in my gut, in my viscera. Then wait for the breath to come in on its own. Okay. So, and you don't have to try it if you don't want to, but it's an option. Now, often people will experience more energy. They might experience tingling, vibration, because again, you're shifting out of that shutdown state. It also could bring up memories of things that have happened in the past, challenging things, difficult things, even traumatic things. So if that happens, just try to just observe the sensations, because the sensations will change. Maybe I just say one more thing about fear. Again, which is something that we're all experiencing. We're all experiencing fear. And fear is made up basically of three elements. The primary element are bodily sensations. So it could be tightening of the shoulder, a clenching of our jaws, our guts, as I was describing it. So fear has a sensation, like the twisting in the gut or the raised shoulders, the shoulder tension. But it also has a thought component. So in other words, how do we interpret these sensations? And then it has often an image associated with it, an image or something like a memory. What I found is by far the best way to move out of fear is to become aware of the physical sensations of the tightening, the twisting, the nausea, and allowing those sensations to move. And they will. They absolutely will. That I can guarantee you. Okay, so let's do the exercise together. Again, if anybody, doesn't want to do it or has apprehension about it, then, you can just imagine doing it, actually. So let's do it together, those of you who wish. Easy, full breath. Ooh, nice. And let the sound of the breath go all the way out. And then allow the breath to come in on its own. Filling belly and chest. And again. And just notice sensations, feelings, thoughts, images, inner images, pictures.
Peter, we can also ask people to share into the chat. So this way, if people are up for it, just share your impressions and doing the exercise.
Great. So I click on the chat button. Is that what I do?
Yes.
Okay, because sometimes the people manage it, but let's see here.
But we'll just ask people to jump in and share if they just any impressions they have about
Right.
this.
Yeah, of what you noticed in the exercise. Again, it's a very simple exercise, very, very simple exercise. And, you know, people have been making sounds and chanting for literally thousands of years. It could be tens of thousands of years. And so if it didn't work, it wouldn't have lasted so long. It really wouldn't have lasted so long. But it obviously has. And now this exercise is specifically to work with that state of pervasive fear and shutdown so you can come out of it. So, okay, so let me just look over some of the chat questions or feedback.
I'll make it simple, actually. I'll bring the things from the chat into the conversation.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's what I was asking, yeah.
So people are sharing a number of different impressions, both in terms of, you know, someone feeling a bit nauseous and then that disappearing, it being peaceful. Someone's reminded of a breathwork class. There's also a couple of different questions that have come up. A couple of these I think I'm going to enjoy saying out loud. So one question is, where should we feel the vibration?
That's easy. Maybe I didn't give good enough instructions to feel it in the belly, to vibrate it into the belly, because then that's what sends the new messages back up to the vagus, through the vagus nerve to the brain. It's actually to stimulate the same receptors that have been, let's just say, have been commandeered for this shutdown, this threat response, and having a new signal from the belly.
And then a second question is, how long does it need to be repeated?
That's an individual question. Usually, if I'm, you know, demonstrating it or working with a client, or especially if I'm in a room with, you know, 1,000 people, I'll just do it once. Because the thing about when we've been traumatized, we begin to fear the very sensations that can actually take us out of the trauma. And we fear, and that becomes generalized, because then we fear any new sensation that's in the body, even if it's in a positive direction, initially. As I mentioned, once we allow it to move through, it will move through. So again, I just want to do it the smallest amount. I call this titration. You know, when I started to developing my work, there was another form of therapy that was being taught, and it was called what was it called? Prolonged exposure therapy, where the person would go over a trauma over and over and over in a cathartic way, and the idea being that you drain the swamp. But really, I was discovering that that could also cause re-traumatization. So we want to expose ourselves to these sensations one small amount at a time. That's really the key. So that's why it's best just to do the exercise at first once, and then maybe twice, until the person becomes more familiar with the sensation and befriends the physical sensation. Because these energies are very, very powerful. And if it's okay, I'd like to maybe just show a short video that might give you again, some idea of how this works. Is that okay, Aaron, to do that?
And Peter, is the video again on the breath work, or because there are a couple of clarifying questions for you
Okay,
still?
sure. Let's go on with that then.
So one clarifying question is, a number of people are saying they're feeling this in their chest and not their belly. And so would love your perspective.
Yes. Usually what I'll suggest to the person is, okay, that's fine. But just see if you can, next time, just very gently direct it downwards from there. Because when you're feeling it in the chest, that's fine too. I mean, because it's, you know, that has its own type of sensation. So anything, in a way, anything that gets awakened is going to be beneficial. So, but again, you know, individually, I'd have to, you know, I might explore that with the person. But again, the idea is to very easily direct the sensation, let the sensation maybe move a little bit more downward. And again, at the end of the breath, just allow a new breath to come in, filling belly, and then up in chest, up into the chest. And then again, talking too much. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. Again, the idea is to not do it X many times, but just simply to get the sense of directing it lower and lower in your belly. And then once you've done that, to maybe direct it even more downward to the lower part of the belly. And that's an area that many, many people have cut off from. You know, those are where our basic life energies are, our sexual energies are, our sensual energies exist. So again, opening the body to new experiences which then contradict the feelings of overwhelming helplessness. And again, this is, yeah.
So I think we'll go on to the video. I'll just say, Peter, if I'm not mistaken, the sound is a V sound. Vu?
Boo, yeah.
Vu. Perfect.
Yeah. V. Now I know, for example, people who are speak Germanic language as their main language. It's a little bit hard to get the V, so it comes out more wow, which is fine. Again, the idea again is to use whatever sound and then directing the sound. I'm going to grab something very quickly. I'll be right back. Don't leave me, please.
Thank you. For the other questions that are being put into the chat, just so you know, we're paying attention to those, and we'll keep coming back. And for those of you that that don't know, the invitation is to keep sharing questions or thoughts that you have into the chat, and so this way we can share them with Peter as we go along too.
Okay, so are you seeing my screen now? Okay, great. By the way, this is an image that I use to really understand that when a person is able to move through fear, because courage is about actually it's not the opposite of feeling fear. It's not the opposite. It's having to feel our sensations and still move forward. And so this is a tradition in Japan. It's called wabi-sabi. And when a teacup would break, teacups were, tea was a very important part of Japanese society. And so it really is about sharing, sharing something. It's a ritual, in a very beautiful ritual. Anyhow, if the pot cracked, they would fill the cracks with gold. And they believed that when somebody suffered damage or trauma or neglect or abuse, that as they're able to transform those sensations, it becomes more beautiful. So the gold is where we break, we can become the stronger and the more beautiful and the more vibrant and the more compassionate. So again, that image of the gold repairing the shattered cup or the shattered self. Okay, now let's go to the next one. Okay. Now this one. Now, do you have the sound? Did the sound come?
The sound is coming through.
Okay, great. So what you're going to see is a predator-prey interaction. It's between a cheetah and between an impala. And if the cheetah is unable to make, oh, by the way, and this chase that you see is going on at 140 kilometers an hour, 65 miles an hour, and the cheetah is only able to sustain that kind of expenditure of energy for a short time, for about 20 seconds to half a minute. And so if she's not able to make the kill in that time, her cubs will starve. And as the cheetah is this beautiful animal and an endangered species, we in a way root for the cheetah, and you'll see where I'm going with this, but also can identify with the impala, because I'm sure at times we've all felt threatened and needing to escape. So let's just look at this interaction and see what we can learn from it. Hello.
She dashes forward. This time, Duma has killed a good-sized female impala. Unfortunately, in the plain, one's own gratification often stimulates another's envy. Duma's catch has been witnessed from start to finish. The spy is Mama Kingua.
So that's a hyena. And again, in nature's scheme, the hyena knows that the cheetah has very little energy left.
A spotted hyena. She knows that Duma is completely exhausted by her final sprint. And yet, things may not finish as we thought they would, for sometimes the weak are capable of cunning trickery.
Not trickery, biology. Okay, so let me stop sharing. Oh, I guess you took care of that for me. Okay, so here's the energy, the bound energy in the impala, in all of us. And so what happens if we look at the energy with the impala before the cheetah sprang forth? They were enjoying their afternoon meal, grazing on an uplands meadow, and so their energy was like this. Then when they sensed the possibility of some threat, they increased their alertness, they increased their energy level. And then when the cheetah made the lunge, then they increased their energy level to the highest amount that it could. And then at the moment when the cheetah brings down the impala, all of this energy gets locked in. And this is what's locked in our bodies with trauma and, again, with prolonged perceived threat or danger. So one thing that we don't want to do is we don't want in the video, you saw the at that unguarded moment, off the gazelle, the impala went. Okay, so the energy got locked in. That was when it was in this state called tonic immobility, shut down. And then in the moment that energy became released in escape, what happens with us is we are fearful of those very sensations, as I was saying before. So we may be getting overwhelmed by them. If they just all came out at once, if we all brought forth that energy like this, we could easily be overwhelmed. So the idea in all of this is to be kind in a way and just open to these energies one small amount at a time. So instead of opening all of that energy at once, like when we're doing the VU, that's why we're only doing it like once or twice, because we want to just open a little energy and then let it come to equilibrium. And then again, releasing a little of that energy, and then again, allowing it to come to equilibrium. And again, till all of that energy has been released, but not with that explosive springing of that coil. Again, the idea is just one small amount at a time. So, and you know, we all have trauma. I mean, I think I would venture to say that nobody here in the audience is without trauma. It's just, so that's the bad news, that trauma is a fact of life. But the good news is that it doesn't have to be a life sentence. Again, if we touch into it gently, if we understand the basic pulsation of our energy. And this is another little toy that I use here. And when we're traumatized, we're in a state of constriction, a very high constriction. So again, that's when all the energy gets stuck in. And when we first contact our bodies, particularly if that's something we, have alienated ourselves from our bodies over periods of time, when we first feel any body sensation, they feel worse. But when we titrate it and guide the person, then that contraction will lead to an expansion. And that expansion will lead to another contraction, and then a greater expansion, and then another contraction and a greater expansion. So again, that's the idea of bringing forth those sensations, those energies, one small amount at a time, and moving into the sensation, the tightness or the nausea. Some of you reported nausea. And then being able to release that bound energy, that trauma survival energy. Okay.
Peter, thank you. Maybe we could take a few questions from the group, and also there's a couple of follow-up questions for you as well. One of the things that we've been hearing people share with us in this group and beyond is, with the amount of things that are going on with COVID, with the kinds of things that are happening in the States and in many other parts of the world, there's the feeling of overwhelm. There's also numbness and other things. And I guess one of the questions is, how do we recognize when we're numb or overwhelmed? And how can we regulate?
Numbness is a characteristic of this kind of trauma. Even more people experience that rather than experience the classical PTSD symptoms like flashbacks and hypervigilance and so forth. So the numbness, again, is something that builds up gradually. Doesn't usually happen at once, although sometimes it can, sometimes it does. And when we scan our bodies, and after doing an exercise just like we did with the VU, most people will find some areas in their body where they're more enlivened. Other parts of their body where they're numb or even absent. You may not have awareness, for example, of your hips, your pelvis. Many people, for them, it's vacant, it's just not there. And this numbness, again, is part of the shutdown, because when the Impala was brought down, the Impala was not be feeling the pain and the terror of its demise, of its being torn apart, because it gets flooded with these chemicals called endorphins, which are basically the body's own opioid system. But when we come out of the numbness and start coming into sensations other than the numbness, again, that can be frightening, that can be unsettling a little bit. But again, once we're able to do that, we will then start moving through it, and our bodies will become more enlivened. You know, these exercises can be done alone. And I recommend that you do it with a friend, with a colleague, do it even when you're in the field with each other. You know, there's a Motown song, it goes something like, it takes one to stand in the dark alone. It takes two to let the light shine through. So having another person there just present and witnessing at what any sensations and feelings you're having can be really, really valuable. And you know, and again, we are social animals. This whole thing about social distancing, which we're all obviously aware of, I think that's an unfortunate term, and I think it's a really misnomer. What we're needing is, there's no question about it, certain degree of physical distance, but we do need social connection. So being with people that you know, or talking on like this kind of media, Zoom and Skype and Bazak and Balak, and whatever it is, so that you're able to keep contact with others, because our nervous systems were designed to co-participate in others, because we are social animals. And when we're not in a trauma reaction, we seek contact. We seek contact with others. And again, with this isolation, that's been curtailed, at least to some degree. So it's really important to not distance yourself socially. There was a wonderful, wonderful video that I saw, that I have. Italy was one of the, after China, was one of the really biggest outbreaks. And they did the right thing. They immediately got into social distancing. And then you could see one young man went onto his little balcony with his guitar and played his guitar. Somebody else was playing, I think, an accordion. And then another person, a couple, an elderly couple, were banging pots and pans together, making their own rhythms. So they were saying, we're here, we're connecting, we are here for you. You know, people who have done, put up signs. I know this happened to some person in Ireland, for people who had difficulty because of their age or something to go out and do shopping. They said, can we do anything? Can we go shopping for you? Is there anything you need? In Switzerland, again, a place where they did things right, really did things right. At the very beginning, they again instituted social, physical distancing, and they talked to the young people and said, you know, it's important that we have solidarity with the old people, with your grandparents and your older aunts and uncles. And so it's important not to come and visit them right now. And you can bring things for them and leave it by their door. You can talk to them on the phone, or if the grandparents know how to use the social platform, which is actually a good term for it now, really. I think of social media. It's now being commandeered for social connection, which is so, as I said, so vitally, vitally, vitally important. So again, they ask the children to keep in contact with the grandparents, with the older relatives, to bring things to, that they need. And then again, the incidence of this kind of virus, it really it became diminished fairly quickly. So again, unfortunately, we don't necessarily have leaders who are giving us consistent, accurate information. And it leaves a lot of uncertainty. And again, uncertainty is one of the friends of this kind of trauma, of this shutdown, because you don't know what to expect. People need that kind of information. We need to know, even if it may change, but we need to know, for example, that in June 15th, this will now be allowed. And
I just want to make the most of the last 10 minutes that we have. And so maybe I could run two or three more questions by you from the group.
Of course, gladly.
And this builds on what you shared then with the way that we process trauma. So one question was just around the VU exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Does this help to heal the trauma, or is it just a coping mechanism?
No, it really can help heal and put that gold filling in that cracked cup. No, it can actually help us move through the trauma. Because again, remember, trauma is stuck in the body. And when it's stuck in the body, we perceive it everywhere. Everything has the sense of danger or even of life threat. Because what we experience inside, we project onto the outside. As within, so without. So if we change our inner sensations, then our perceptions will change. So it really is, in a way, defanging the trauma, allowing those energies, energies to gradually release and to welcome them into our bodies. So yes, it's not. So for example, in a lot of mindfulness, and I don't mean this in any pejorative way, that we'll do a breath. You'll take a specific breath, like breathing in for 2 counts, breathing out for 4 counts, something like that. And sometimes that can be helpful. I mean, it can, especially if you're like laying in bed, coming to sleep. Doing that kind of exercise can settle the nervous system enough to relax enough to, drift off. But my experience is it doesn't really change the way the trauma is stuck in the body. Because when we're doing the VU, we're waiting for the spontaneous breath to emerge rather than counting the breath. So again, I think both can be, of course, valuable, but really when it comes to healing the trauma, we need to have the restoring of the spontaneous breath. And that resets the nervous system each time to a more resilient capacity.
And Peter, a clarifying question. That's for the experience that we're having now. Like if we're in a circumstance that's difficult, this is a way of processing the experience at the moment. This is not a way of processing trauma that we experienced 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
That's right. It's something that we're doing, that we're experiencing in the moment, because there is only the moment, really, anyhow. We do a lot of outreach where there's been disasters, natural disasters, or ethnopolitical warfare. And when we work in the tsunami in Southeast Asia, which killed hundreds of thousands of people, we were working in Thailand. And at the end of every day, we would meet together on the beach, and we would do these kinds of exercises together. And then we would share a little bit after we did with each other, to share with each other what we were experiencing, what our day was like, where we felt really solid in what we were doing, or whether we felt insecure, or whether we had questions about, the different, is this culturally appropriate? Because again, we have to make sure that something is appropriate for the particular worldview, the culture that other people hold that have very different than ours. So, so anyhow, by being able to do this, it was kind of interesting, because then some of the people from who worked at the hotel, they would see us doing that, and then when we came back, they would ask us, well, what were you doing? It looked very interesting. And we would say, next time, come with us tomorrow, and we'll show it to you, and we can do it together. So they showed up, and then, they did these kinds of things, and they said, this is the first time that we felt not scared that this would happen again. So again, these are exercises. They're simple to do. I've written a number of books where I do discuss or do demonstrate some of these exercises. A number of them are in different languages, so you can look them up, I guess.
Peter, we'll send out links to people as well to your homepage, to this as part of this. One last question from the group.
Yeah.
I just want to be super sensitive about time here. So the last question is, what would you, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, what do you believe is a way of healing old trauma that we've experienced much earlier?
It depends, because often trauma that we've experienced a long time ago happened in a relationship. We were hurt, betrayed by somebody who was supposed to love and protect us. And that's very confusing. I mean, it's more than confusing. Young children don't fight or flee. When they experience threat, they attach. They seek safety in others, safety in other adults and caregivers. Again, of people that are supposed to be consistent and reliable. But if those people are also the ones that are traumatizing us, frightening us, shaming us, humiliating us, we are in this bind, this double bind, because if we try to attach, we may be hurt again, but our natural biological response is to attach. So this has to be done usually within the context of a therapeutic relationship. And by the way, you will also get it when you send it out. I'll give you the information if you want to look up a therapist or even trainings in different parts of the world. I'll send that along as well. Because there's, for me personally, wherever I live, spend any time. So whether it's in California or on the East Coast or in Switzerland or in Germany or in Brazil or wherever it is, I always will find a really good therapist. And to me, it's a necessary luxury. It keeps me current. It allows me to really, because, when you're in a new situation, it will often bring up childhood trauma. But anyhow, to know that to be with another person, to be witnessed, and to be witnessing of our experience is really a valuable thing that we can use. And again, I know that many of you, I guess most of you, work in the field where there has been social dislocation and that kind of thing. So, again, I know I have only 2 minutes left, but this is something that I recommend. We can do it for each other, even to some degree to uncovering our own traumas, but still it's so important to have some outside guidance by somebody who really knows how to guide a person through these sensations so they don't get stuck in numbness and exhaustion, but come back into their own, with their own life force, their own vitality. Because that's what this is. This energy is our energy of aliveness. And it's, again, when we're numb, we're cutting off from that energy. So bottom line is to recover the energy, regardless of whether it's situational or whether it's old residual trauma, chronic trauma, sometimes called pervasive developmental trauma.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a gift having you with us, and I think you haven't seen this along the way, but there have been a ton of questions and feedback and other things. We'll be sending out information about the different pieces you talked about, and we'll be glad to act also as an interface if people are looking for support with this. It's been a gift having you with us. And then just for next week for everyone, and Peter, just to give you a sense, I think there's already a request for a second session with you. That's already in there. So just so you know. But for next week, we're going to be doing a session with Rabbi David Rosen, with Father Timothy Radcliffe, and with an imam from Morocco. And the idea is going to be exploring rituals from different traditions.
Wow.
How they support us, how they support our boundaries, how we can learn from them to nourish ourselves, both individually and as groups, and how we can use them universally. So we'll hope that you'll be joining us as well. The three of them are absolutely wonderful.
Oh, that sounds great, Aaron. I mean, really, because ritual is so important. I mean, what I was describing when we were doing it together with our group is a ritual. And rituals really give us a sense of grounding.
Peter, thank you for that. That was wonderful. Maybe what we could do just to sign out is just maybe turn on our microphones as we sign out and just say goodbye, just so Peter can take in as well the group that he's been with today, each and every one of us. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And keep up the good work.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.